why did the average citizen of the Third Reich just sit by as the Holocaust transpired? Now, this very dramatic question is something I believe all of us have heard dozens and dozens of times in different debates on empathy, on human nature, on conformity, and much, much more. And the thing is that academia doesn't really give us an answer to this. The closest we can get to an answer is that we have this justification that this unprecedentedly strong propaganda machinery at the time convinced people of a certain reality and made them act a certain way. And the way that this works is either that we imagine that they were persuaded by the idea that the government was doing what they were doing for their own benefit, or potentially the idea that the atrocities everyone is talking about are not as bad as one had imagined, or simply the idea that, yeah, everything that they've seen is terrible, but they're the only ones disagreeing with it, and if they speak up, they might become a victim as well. Now, I think this is a fair answer to the question of why people behave this way, but I don't think it tells us how propaganda actually managed to convince people to believe this kind of narrative. And this is what I try to tackle in my thesis. I try to understand how we get from a perspective of believing today that something is incorrect to believing tomorrow that this is absolutely true and we should fully agree with it. Or more saliently for contemporary times, how do we go from believing that someone who's our friend and neighbor today, tomorrow might be perceived as an enemy and a person that we should kick out of the country? And the way I try to do this is that I'm not the first person to think of this, and there are hundreds of theories of how this essentially works and how people are convinced into certain sort of sets of ideas. But what I want to figure out is which of these ideas actually happens in contemporary societies. If we see that there's growing ethnic hatred, and if we see that there's growing anti-Semitism, if we see that people are polarized against each other and they actively start disliking each other, I want to see what happens in actual countries that face democratic decline. And in order to do that, I take decades and decades of media data, specifically at this stage for the country of Serbia and potentially Hungary, to see what are the patterns that transpire in language that make people, that kind of sell these ideas and make people convinced of this. I first study the media content to find patterns that happen, and then I use experimental designs to combine all of these theories that we've already known and all of them that we now see in democratically declining societies to see which of them convinces people best. And the reason why I think it's important to take this step from kind of roughly understanding the mechanisms at play and apply them to real democratically declining societies is because, if anything, our contemporary reality proves to us that even though we know all of these theories, we don't know exactly how they work. And until we know exactly how they work, we can't really take them apart.